8 players, Southern Miss players in the Super Bowl. Chris Jones kind of leads the way. Willie Gay got hurt, and so he had a little cleanup on his knee. I can't imagine. Got to be crushed. You don't know if you ever make it back. Ask Dan Marino. But Chris Jones leading the way on the Kansas City Chiefs defensive line. But there's all sorts of Mississippi ties. Bruce Arians coached at Mississippi State twice. Once for Bob Tyler / Emory Bellard, once for Jackie Sherrill. And he's obviously the coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And there's some more. Sarah Thomas will be officiating the Super Bowl. She's from right here, 15 minutes from here, and which is super awesome that she'll be officiating the game. She'll be part of the officiating crew for the Super Bowl, Sarah Thomas from Mississippi. So football ball always rolls through us, and that's a good thing. The Out of Bounds Show, 105.9 The Zone, ESPN, brought to you by the Charbroiled Oysters at Drago's Seafood Restaurant and Oyster Bar. Grab some a dozen charbroiled, a dozen raw, and some Abita Andygator, which is a delicious beer out of Louisiana, and celebrate the Super Bowl over the weekend with some oysters at Drago's. We welcome in our friend Steve Palazzolo, PFF.com, Pro Football Focus, NFL Insider. Steve, what do you make? People don't know exactly what's going to happen on Sunday as far as the Tampa Bay safeties and whether or not they're healthy or play. When you hear that, you know how dynamic the Chiefs are and the fact that they can go deep in a heartbeat. How do you handicap it when you look at some injuries in the secondary for Tampa Bay?
Yeah, first off, how do I get some of those oysters sent up to Cincinnati for me this weekend?
We can make that happen.
Is that possible?
Yeah.
Okay. Just let me know. Let me know. Yeah, obviously it's a huge concern for the Bucs. I mean, Antoine Winfield as a rookie has been absolutely fantastic, and he was unable to go in the Packers game. And then Jordan Whitehead had 2 forced fumbles in the NFC Championship before he got hurt. You know, he had one of the biggest plays of the game, forcing the fumble on Aaron Jones. And helped the Bucs get up by 18 points there early in the second half. So it's a huge factor because I think it just changes what the Bucs can do defensively. You know, I think early on in the game against the Chiefs in the last matchup, they played a lot of man coverage, and that just didn't work. And Tyreek Hill was absolutely torching the Bucs secondary because he was left one-on-one. And then when they started to adjust, they started to play a little bit softer, too high looks, and that takes discipline. That takes safeties being in position play after play after play. And the great ones, the Mahomesians of the world, take advantage of that at one time, the one time that you're out of position. So, yeah, I think it's potentially a huge factor for the Bucs, for the Chiefs, given just how difficult it is to slow that Chiefs passing attack.
Golly, man. I remember those plays. That dude's a beast. I want to pick Tampa Bay, but Steve's not helping me. PFF.com, Steve Palazzolo on the Coors Light guest line discussing the Super Bowl. Okay, so what can Tampa Bay do? I mean, what does Tampa Bay this is, I think, pretty obvious, but what can Tampa Bay do to somewhat slow down the Chiefs?
Yeah, so it's interesting because I think that the team that has had the best game plan against Mahomes and the Chiefs has been the Patriots through the years. But they play Patriots type of style, right? I mean, it's not as simple. Defensive football isn't as simple as copying what other teams do because every team has their own strengths and weaknesses. But if you want to take a page out of the Patriots defensive playbook, they do a really good job of playing that man coverage like the Bucs tried to play, but always making sure that you're extra defenders. Like when you play a traditional 4-man rush and you play cover 1, you have 2 extra defenders, 1 safety generally. It could be 2 safeties, but usually a safety and a linebacker, right? And you deploy those extra resources toward Travis Kelce and toward Tyreek Hill. And especially in this playoffs, maybe more than ever, with Sammy Watkins hurt, the third options for the Chiefs, they just haven't been as productive. And in part because Tyreek and Kelce just haven't been stopped, right? So you want to make Mecole Hardman beat you. You want to make Byron Pringle beat you, or Sammy Watkins if he is banged up and playing. You want to make those guys beat you as much as possible. So the more you can take away Tyreek and Kelce, and I know that sounds good in theory. They've beaten double teams before, but you just want to discourage that first read from Mahomes and hope that he's going to go somewhere else with it. That, and of course the pass rush. You know, I mean, the Mike Remmers moving over to left tackle, all the injuries that Kansas City's had up front. You know, if the Bucs can not only get pressure but be disciplined in their pass rush lanes and not let Mahomes get out of the pocket, I think those are certainly going to be some of the keys defensively for the Bucs.
Okay. Steve Palazzolo, PFF.com, Pro Football Focus, NFL Insider. He joins us on Out of Bounds, ESPN 105.9 The Zone, and he joins us on the Coors Light Made to Chill guest line. All right, let's flip it. Tampa Bay's offense, Brady's never had this many weapons, against Kansas City. What matchup, what's the first matchup you're looking at when you start to break down Brady in the offense against Chris Jones in the defense? Steve?
Yeah, well, Chris Jones against Aaron Sinney, the backup guard for the Bucs, is one to keep an eye on. You know, there's a chance if Kansas City does deploy Jones over Sinney, who is by far the most inexperienced and, you know, the weak link of the Bucs offensive line, we could see Jones with like an 8-pressure game, a 10-pressure game. So we could be coming out of Sunday saying, wow, Chris Jones dominated another Super Bowl. Nice job. But the matchup is really, it's Brady versus Steve Spagnuolo, the defensive coordinator for the Chiefs. I mean, you can't fool the 43-year-old, but Spags does so much pre-snap and rotating post-snap and disguise after disguise. They blitzed about half of Brady's dropbacks in the first matchup. And when the blitz isn't like this foolproof way of winning, right? You leave holes on the back end, but with Brady and the Bucs, who are still trying to feel things out offensively, Brady still doesn't know exactly where his receivers are going to be, maybe, you know, against the blitz. You need a QB and a receiver to see the field in exactly the same way. It makes the Bucs offense play just a little bit quicker. And there's still, you know, a quarterback in the first year in the system. So I think that's the matchup. Spagnuolo, you know, his blitz packages, his post-snap disguise, because if Brady reads it out, I think, you know, you mentioned the Bucs playmakers, they can win, right? Whether Antonio Brown is on the field or not, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Scotty Miller getting behind the defense, Cameron Brate, Rob Gronkowski, all those guys can win one-on-ones. So it's going to be about, I think, Brady being able to diagnose that defense as quickly as possible.
Now, you mentioned Spagnuolo, the defensive coordinator with the Chiefs. He was the Giants' defensive coordinator. I may have this right.
He was. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So he's already beat Brady once or twice in the Super Bowl.
Once in the Super Bowl. The second time he had already moved on. I believe he was with the Rams at the time.
Gotcha.
So yeah, that first one, the best team of all time, you know, he shut down in the Super Bowl.
That's it. Wow. So I want our listeners to remember that Spagnuolo was the one that had that unit with Strahan and all those dudes that disrupted Brady and held them to whatever it was, 14 or 17 points when Eli and the Giants won. Okay. Steve Palazzolo, PFF.com. Who do you like and why in the game?
I mean, I would pick the Chiefs just because, you know, not only are they the favorites, but, you know, I just expect Mahomes and Kelsey and Tyreek to be difficult to stop, right? I mean, it's another race to 30 points. And, you know, it feels like a game that'll be another 31-27 type of matchup. I like the Chiefs in the game. I could see a path for the Bucs to win. I wouldn't be surprised if Brady pulls off another fourth quarter comeback. He might have to. He almost did in the first matchup. You know, the Chiefs got out to a big lead. They only ended up winning by 3, and Brady just didn't get the ball back, which is another factor too. The Chiefs are really good at, you know, their 4-minute drill and running out the clock if they do have a lead, and that could be the deciding factor once again, not getting the ball back in Brady's hands in the fourth quarter. So I like the Chiefs to win. I could definitely see a path for the Bucs to win, but I think we're going to see a good game, couple really good offenses.
All right, so 3.5-point spread. Would you, even though you're picking them, you still could go either way here. Would you lay them or give them?
It is a toss-up. Look, the Chiefs have only covered, I think, one time in their last 8 or 9 games. So I would probably take the Bucs if I was putting money down. But,
okay.
Again, it's a safer play for me just saying, hey, the Chiefs are going to win. And that's obvious. But, you know, I think this could just be the start of the next dynasty right here, and Brady being the guy on the other end of the last dynasty. There's so many fascinating storylines with this one, but I just have to lean the Chiefs because they're just a cleaner overall team right now.
I still think it'll be a one-score game. You?
Yeah, I think it'll be close. I think it's going to be a really good one. It's interesting because I don't know how much you want to go back to like the first matchup and try to extract what happened. It was just such a unique game. The Chiefs were unstoppable in the first quarter. Tyreek had 200 yards in the first quarter. You know, the Bucs come back, including like a 38-yard touchdown to Ronald Jones. That was just a coverage breakdown. So it's just like a really weird game that ended up as a 3-point game. And I think, you know, in this one, there could be some weird ebbs and flows. The Chiefs get up early, the Bucs get up early, but I think it does end up, you know, pretty close. And a one-score game, I think, is absolutely in the cards this weekend.
Now, with the Patriots, Brady, they didn't usually score in the first quarter.
They didn't. Yeah,
I don't know
were slow
why.
starters every Super Bowl.
Right.
It was really weird. Yeah.
Okay.
But I think what you saw with Brady, you know, so many of those games, it just became his game in the second half.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I don't know if you're born with it or whatever. I mean, the stats that Brady has over his last 4 Super Bowls in the fourth quarter, and then you add overtime in that Atlanta game, he's got over like 520 yards, 4 touchdowns. I mean, it's insane. And it's about a game's worth of action, maybe a little bit more. A game's worth of action with over 500 yards, 4 touchdowns, and all in clutch, close one-score games in the fourth quarter, you know, including the Eagles game that they lost. So we'll see. I think my concern with the Bucs is that they do try to run the ball too much, is that they do take it out of Brady's hands too much.
Ooh.
When they have to score points. It's not a game. You can't play keep away with the Chiefs. That's like the prevailing NFL theory. You have to score points. You have to try to get to 38 points as soon as possible. And if you land at 31, you know, good luck. But so they have to try to put points on the board as much as possible in Tampa Bay.
Blake, Steve Palazzolo, PFF.com, talking Super Bowl, NFL Insider on the Coors Light guest line.
Yeah, I have a question kind of on legacy, too, like what you mentioned about dynasties and things like that. So Jordan, 6-0, everybody makes a big deal out of that. You know, you never lost a championship. So Tom's the only player to ever even get close to 10 NFL Super Bowls, but he's 6-3. If he's 6-4, does that affect people's, like, view of him or anything like that?
No.
Like, what's more on the line? Well, but that's the like.
I agree with Steve.
Storyline that is floated out there. You know, you lose
that's
4
Twitter,
Super Bowls,
but not real life.
No, I don't mean to, you know, dismiss your question, Blake. It's a fair question, but I think people are idiots if they just look at Super Bowl record, right? And well, you know, the people that say, well, Joe Montana didn't lose a Super Bowl. Well, yeah, he didn't make it to 6 others that Brady made it to, which means he lost in the divisional round or the conference championship. So I would not. I think Brady for the last couple of years has been playing with house money. You know, he's been declared the GOAT for the last 5 years. He's been playing. This is all house money. But I think what's on the line, I think Brady has more to gain with a win than he has to lose with a loss, right? So if they win, people will be counting rings, and he'll have 7. Are you kidding me? Mahomes, can he ever get to 7? Yeah, you know, and that's going to be the storyline coming out if Brady and the Bucs win. Again, especially if Brady plays well. You know, I think he could still use one of those Super Bowls where he just carries the team start to finish, does play well in the first quarter and the fourth quarter. You know. But if Mahomes and the Chiefs win, it's going to be like, man, Mahomes has won 2 out of 3. The only time as a starter, the only time they didn't lose, he lost in overtime, didn't even touch the ball, and it was to Brady. And he's still young. Like, who's ever going to stop the Chiefs in the next 10 years? Mahomes might go to the next 10 Super Bowls and win 7 of them, right? So that's going to be the story coming out if the Chiefs win. So I think there's a lot on the line, but I wouldn't say you go back and look at Brady's legacy and say, well, he's 6-4 in the Super Bowl. That's not that good. Because, you know, that's just ridiculous. Making it to the 10 is just as difficult.
Right. That's kind of my argument on LeBron going to all those championships, too. People get bogged down in him losing some of them. Most of the time he had inferior teams. But man, to go to 9 straight or whatever it was remarkable. All right. Well, I need to move on to something. Go ahead.
Real quick, does the Tampa win affect how people look at Bill Belichick?
Right or wrong, yeah, I think absolutely. It does.
Wow.
Like I said, I think if you were trying to compare Brady and Belichick, Brady's playing with house money. Like if he just declined, you'd be like, oh, of course he declined. He's 43, right? But now he's playing incredible and he's 43, and that helps Brady's legacy even more. And with Belichick, people are going to look back and say, what did he do with and without Brady? And it is night and day if you break it down. Right or wrong, people are going to look at it, and it absolutely, I think, will affect It shouldn't, but it probably will affect people's perception of Belichick.
Well, Steve, all I care about is what people say on Twitter. Okay.
Yeah, that's the most important thing.
Okay.
It is.
All right. So we've got that. We know what's going on now. Steve Palazzolo on the Out of Bounds show. Let's segue to the blockbuster trade. 2 number 1 picks in the NFL draft. The Lions and Rams do the deal. Give me your thoughts on Stafford from Georgia, a little SEC flavor. Stafford to the Rams. Steve.
So Stafford is as fun to watch as any quarterback, whatever that's worth. I always say that there are 3 or 4 games a year where he looks incredible. He looks like Mahomes at times, 3 or 4 times a year. We're talking no-look passes, arm talent, arm angles. He's just feeling it, and he looks incredible. But it's always just been those 3 or 4 games per season. The rest of his season's generally pretty average, and he's an above-average quarterback overall. So I think the Rams upgraded a little bit from Goff to Stafford, and I think what the Rams see is not only did they upgrade, but they feel like they can do more. The way Sean McVay calls plays, he's essentially trying to beat the defense. He's trying to say, I'm going to call this play, which is going to beat this defense that I think they're going to run. And more often than not, McVay's good at that, right? He's really good at scheming things open. But I think where they felt limited with Jared Goff was when McVay was wrong, because you're going to be wrong sometimes. You call the wrong play, and you need a quarterback who can work outside of structure just a little bit. And Stafford definitely has that much more than Jared Goff. So I think that's where the Rams feel like they really upgraded and they can do more things with Stafford. The problem, I think, is the value that they got. I mean, 2 first-rounders plus a third-rounder, that's just such a massive haul, and it puts a ton of pressure on the Rams over the next few years to keep a really good team around Matthew Stafford with less draft capital, and it's just not a great strategy historically. It's difficult to do. So I think it's a great move for the Lions. They have a 6-year contract for Dan Campbell. He's got time. And now you have 2 firsts and a third to start, the whole rebuild. That's the way you build a team, with a ton of draft capitals. And why not just grab Jared Goff and eat his salary for now? I think it was a great move for the Lions. And I don't think it's there's, again, Twitter. What does Twitter think? They think Matthew Stafford is either Dan Marino or some loser who's never won anything. The truth is somewhere in between. And we'll see if the Rams can get the most out of him.
The Detroit Lions, the new kneecap biters of the NFL. With Dan Campbell and Jared Goff. Who doesn't want to smash some wings and drink some beer with Dan Campbell and talk about kneecap biters? Yeah. All right, so Steve Palazzolo, PFF.com. Steve, we have a friend that is very close to Les Snead, and he told us that Snead does not value the pick, the first-round pick, once you get into 22, 23 to 32. And that's the reason why maybe it was a little bit easier for the Rams to make this call, because, yeah, you can get an Aaron Donald, top 2, 3, 4, 5, or a Deshaun Watson, or a great left tackle. But, there's this pretty big drop every maybe 5 picks or so. What are your thoughts as someone who also works is an NFL draft insider? What are your thoughts on that when you hear that?
Yeah, it's not crazy. I think, and I appreciate Les's aggressiveness that I think is based in some level of research, right? It's not just, you could tell he's done his homework on that, right? So I'm okay with that as a concept, and clearly that's what he believes. That they will go from 2017 through 2023 without making a first-round selection. I think the problem is, even when you get a Jalen Ramsey, who is awesome and is incredible, giving up 2 first-rounders for a Jalen Ramsey might not be worth it in the long run, even if he's great. Now, for a quarterback, it's different. But I think, again, if the quarterback is Deshaun Watson, and Deshaun Watson is going to be that, every week I say the top 8 guy, the top 5 guy. Watson is that. Matthew Stafford's QB like 11, 12, 13 throughout his career. So I don't know if the value between Stafford and Goff is that drastic, especially not for 2 firsts and a third. Now, I understand Les's point, and again, I don't necessarily disagree with it, but I think the problem in the NFL is if you trade multiple firsts for a non-quarterback like Jalen Ramsey, he has to be worth 2 players. And it's really difficult to do in the NFL because 30 guys contribute in a given week, which is different than, say, the NBA when it's 8.
Right.
Or Major League Baseball where it's like 12 or 13. So average players in the NFL are far more valuable in the NFL than they are in other sports. And superstars who are not quarterbacks are far less valuable in the NFL. Name guys like Jalen Ramsey and Todd Gurley are far less valuable in the NFL. Guys that have big names, less valuable than quarterbacks, of course, but than stars at other positions in other sports. So my concern is multiple first rounders for non-QBs or multiple first rounders for a marginal upgrade from Goff to Stafford at quarterback.
That was a damn good answer. That was pretty.
Thank you.
Yes. Steve Palazzolo, PFF.com on the Coors Light guest line. I wasn't sure what direction you were going to go, but I enjoyed that.
There's nuance. It's nothing's black and white
Sure.
when it comes to this analysis. There's nuance to it,
Right.
and I think that's what makes it great,
Yeah. Okay. Do you agree? I've only got a couple of minutes here. Do you agree with this whole Troy Aikman was too harsh on Jared Goff? Michael Silver wrote, I thought, a really good piece on NFL.com, I think it was, kind of walking us through the McVay, Snead, Goff thing and how it all played out. So bottom line, did you agree that Aikman was too harsh during telecast on Goff, Steve?
No. I think Michael Silver was, his buddies with Jared Goff and, carrying his water just a little bit. Look, I think teams have to make decisions, right? And I think it's a fascinating decision that the Rams made. And I'll go back to the NFL 7 or 8 years ago. I used the Andy Dalton rule, right? When you had somebody less than Andy Dalton, you felt like you needed a quarterback. And remember back in the day, any quarterback that had like a good game as a backup, everybody's like, oh, we're going to trade first-round picks for this guy. Go get this next backup. He's a capable starter. The NFL could not find capable starters 7 or 8 years ago. Now the Rams are taking a capable starter in Jared Goff and saying we need to make an upgrade, right? So they're treating players like assets, which is what they are. I understand it's a relationship business, and Goff probably felt slighted and all that stuff, but the Rams did what was best for the organization in their mind and said we need to upgrade the quarterback position. We have a starter. Our goal is not to have just a starter. It's to have a high-end starter, and we think we have one in Matthew Stafford. So from an Aikman standpoint, I think he's always just been good at being honest and being a former player that just says, hey, this guy's not playing well. This guy is playing well. That's far more refreshing than saying everybody's good. Now, everybody's good in the context of, hey, they're better than Bo and they're better than Blake, but Aikman's truthful. I like it.
I agree with you. Man, that was fun. 23 minutes with Palazzolo, PFF.com. We'll get more into the NFL draft and, all that kind of good stuff after the Super Bowl with Steve. Steve, I know you'll be working, but it's still fun that we work in sports. Have a great weekend, my man. And we'll talk next week. See you, dude.
Thank you, guys. Yeah. Go Tom Brady.
Steve Palazzolo, PFF.com. Pro Football Focus has Matt Corral as the number 6 quarterback returning in college football. I could make an argument he's much higher, but 6 is still incredible. Matt Corral, the number 6 returning college quarterback. Matt Corral at number 6, PFF.com. The Out of Bounds Show brought to you by the Oysters at Drago.